The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Alan Blumkin. I'm here with my good friend David Nemec for another session of David Nemec's baseball history and trivia. Welcome, David.
Welcome. Pleasure to be here with you again, Al.
Yeah, it always is. I wish we could turn this into a TV show, but that's impossible.
I know. At this point it is. It's fun just doing what we're doing, talking about baseball as we knew it when we were kids, and it's fun. And we were talking about trivia, just you and me, and you asked a very interesting question. You know, what distinguishes trivia from minutia? And a lot of people who are really involved in trivia today, we feel, are more into the minutia of the game rather than trivia. And I did come up with a definition of what I always felt trivia was. And I put this together one afternoon in Cincinnati when I was on Game of the Week with Brian Gumbel. And this was during Pete Rose's hitting streak. And Brian asked me, he said, you know, you consider yourself an expert in baseball trivia, and you've written books on it. And what do you consider trivia to be? Why is trivia important? And I was putting it together. I was thinking about it as he was asking the question. I said, what's important about it to me is the question is designed to teach me something. I'm going to learn something from digging for the answer. And I brought up the hitting streak Pete Rose was at that point right in the midst of, and Pete was interviewed shortly before me and talked about it and talked about the pressure and so forth. And we talked about hitting streaks in general, and how Pete was aiming, at that point he's aiming for Willie Keeler's National League streak. And then if he could surpass Keeler, he would move on to DiMaggio. And we talked about what preceded Keeler. Were there any streaks before Keeler? And I said, yes, and there was one. There was one streak that Keeler was actually aiming for, and that was Bill Dolan. And when I learned that, I started learning something about Bill Dolan, who was a great shortstop in the 1890s. He initially came up as a third baseman, and I began putting his career together and looking at him as a whole and seeing him as a potential figure for the Hall of Fame, and was driven then to be curious enough to wonder why he wasn't in the Hall of Fame. And it was complex, the reasoning behind it. It was never really ascertained, but the probability is Bill Dolan just didn't. People were not enamored of him. They didn't like him. A lot of players didn't like him. A lot of players who played under him as a manager didn't like him. And as a result, there were also sports writers who didn't like him. So the Hall of Fame then is in part, and what was always in part, a popularity contest. There were certain figures like Ty Cobb who weren't terribly popular even in their time, and who could not possibly miss the Hall of Fame because of the sheer magnitude of all the
those numbers,
game. And numbers spoke for themselves. You know, whatever the guy's name was, unless he did something terribly untoward, where he was going to go in, and then the guy who did something terribly untoward, who beat Ty Cobb's record, is still not in, and that's Pete Rose, of course, who bet on the game, admitted to betting on the game, and has never really come fully clean, in my opinion. And if he ever were to do that, I still think there's a chance that Pete might one day get into the Hall of Fame.
Pete Pete Rose, to me, was a genius in playing baseball, but a screw up in every other aspect.
Yeah.
And if he would have done a mea culpa when Giamatti says you banned him for life, it may have lasted 5 years, 10 years, and he would be in now. But he's stonewalled for 20 years, 25 years, and he did it to himself.
He did. Yeah, he did. Because Giamatti would have loved to find a way to not have to ban him. I think that we'll never know. I mean, it's impossible to state one way or another whether it's heart attack, or I think he died of a heart attack, and whether it was
like a week after he suspended him.
Yeah, and it happened simultaneously almost with the suspension. So you have to wonder if that pressure. He
was also a fanatical smoker, Giamatti.
Was he? I didn't know that.
Oh, very, very heavy, yeah. His son, Paul, became a respected actor, movie actor.
Paul Giamatti. Yeah, he's a fine actor, and I've seen him in any number of roles, and that in itself is a great trivia question. What famous actor is the son of a former baseball commissioner? And those are the kinds of trivia. That's what real trivia is all about. You learn something from the answer, and it's not something obscure. It's something that's going to stick with you, and it broadens your knowledge not only of baseball, but it also helps you in other spheres of your life.
Because I would ask stuff like, there were 6 Phillies in the late 40s through the mid-50s that were teammates for first-string teammates for 7 years, with one slight exception. Kurt Simmons was in the Army in 51. I said 2 of them were Hall of Famers, Richie Ashburn and Robin Roberts. Name 3 of the other 4.
Yeah. And those are good questions too, because it puts you back in the era of the Whiz Kids, and all 6 of them were on that team. And so if you go over that team in your mind, the Phillies had the nucleus of a team that should have won more than it did. 50 should not have been their only pennant, given they once
asked Richie Ashburn what happened after 50. He said no blacks.
Exactly. That's exactly what their problem was. Yeah, they did not go with the flow, and the only team that could get away with not going with the flow was the Yankees, because they were so well stocked in every other area, and they could continue to sustain the idea of bringing in black players, and eventually it caught up to them too, and it caught up to the farm system and in the 60s, and they have after the early part of the 60s, they were in that organization was not in very good shape after 65. They had trouble.
What happened? The 2 things that happened. First of all, in '65, they instituted the draft, and the other thing was when Topping and Webb decided to get out. When Owen decides to get out back then, they stopped. The first thing that goes is player development. So when Mantle and Ford and Howard and all the rest of them got old, there's nobody to replace them.
No. Yeah, that was true. Yeah, they had a lengthy stretch in Mantle's final years when they had guys like Pepitone and Bobby Mercer who were coming in, who were good ball players, and would have made a difference no matter what era they played with the Yankees. But they had a lot of other guys who kind of hung on for years because there's just nobody better in the farm system to replace them. And
one of the times in the individual was a tie, and I had to come up, right away with a tiebreaker. So I came up with this one: the Yankees lost 13 World Series. Okay, so there were two managers who beat them twice in the World Series. Name them. The first one who buzzed in was, and they got it, was John McGraw and Walter Olson.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, well,
that was a very good question to ask at that. Yeah,
because I remember in Milwaukee, I wrote about half of it, and after you won, you came over to me and asked me which ones are yours, and I gave you a couple of them. And she said to me, "You are so big." I said, "I only learned from the best." I learned, obviously, those two books in the 70s when I found them, and then, of course, when Steve Nadell told Scott and Fredo and me that you were coming to New York for '91, we both got very, very excited.
Yeah, it was exciting for me too, because I never actually played I played trivia in groups, mostly with guys I worked with. That was with the Department of Pearl in New York State, and there were a lot of real big ball fans there. And we combined it also with pro football, the NFL, and there'd be questions back and forth about both the NFL and MLB, and we had a lot of fun in those. But I never was actually on a stage in a competitive where you with buzzers and the whole shebang, and it really was a learning experience for me. How quick I had to be, because your team was loaded with four guys who were right on top of that buzzer. Almost. Yeah.
Well, what happened was we lost in the final in Washington in '87. We lost in the semifinals in '88 to the Minnesota. We just had an unraveling there. So '89 was in Albany, and Jerry Byrne was the one who was writing all the questions. So I think I said to Scott or Dick or Thompson or Zacco, I said, there's going to be a lot of Boston questions in here and a lot of 50s questions. He's going to hit my very strong areas. So he says, one of the questions I remember was what three rookies drove in 100 runs in the American League in 1950. So I said Al Rose and Walt Dropo and Luke Easter, right off the top of my head.
That was great to pull that off that quickly. I don't know that.
Those years I know much better than anything close to anything now. I mean, God.
Yeah.
There are players in the majors now for 4 or 5 years. I never heard of them because they play on distant teams that you never see.
I know.
It's just impossible. I speak to Evelyn Begley every Wednesday, and they had the regional here Saturday, which I couldn't go to because I can't get a ride, and I'm not going to pay $100 for transportation back and forth. And I told her it was one of the last ones I attended. There was some kid who must have been 11, 12 years old at the time and did fairly well. So I turned to the kid after it was over. I said, you did better. You're better than I was at your age. And he looks at me, says, "How come?" I said, "Because you have a lot more to remember."
Yeah, you really. Yeah, well, especially if you have to go back for the entire scope of the game. If you're going back to 1871, but most trivia contests now are designed so there's very little in the way of material that precedes expansion. So if you know the game if you know the post-expansion game, and in particular the 21st century game, you're going to do well. You don't need to
story. When they had the convention here in 2017, I'm sitting there watching it, sitting with Zacco and a couple other people, And some kid taps me on the shoulder and says, I heard you have a reputation for this. He says, why don't you play anymore? So I said to the kid, you just watch. So Bruce Brown's been running it for the last bunch of years, and he plays it Jeopardy style. So one of the questions came up, who has a single-season record for RBIs by a Baltimore Oriole? So I would have said Jim Gentile in 1961 drove in 141 runs. And somebody said that, and Bruce Brown says, no, the answer was Miguel Tejada drove in, I forget how many, in 2007. I turned back to the kid and said, now you just saw why I don't play anymore.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But when I watch Quick Pitch every morning. That's the show on MLB that they run overnight. I DVR it and watch it when I wake up. And they have such trivia, like who was the last Yankee player who stole home yesterday? Who was the last Yankee player to steal home? That's minutia.
Right. Yeah, that is minutia.
It's minutia.
Unless there was a famous game and the steal really meant something.
Yeah.
Then it's been well publicized and over the years and it's stuck in memory. But if it's somebody like Horace Clarke in 1972, nobody's going to know that. And
I
know. Because the game was meaningless. The steal didn't mean a whole lot as far as the Yankees were concerned or the final score was concerned, and it really is minutia. But
a question like
that's different.
It was Clint Hartung famous for? He's famous for being on third base as a pinch runner when Bobby Thompson hit the home run.
Yeah, That is one claim to fame. He also was the Hondo Hurricane.
It was supposed to be the greatest thing since Babe Ruth and Walter Johnson.
He was considered to be potentially the next Babe Ruth. He was expected to do both pitch. He was supposed to do what Otani was doing. Yeah. But and so Clint Hartung really is a trivia question, worth a trivia question. Because he did bring that kind of reputation with him as the Hondo Hurricane. And I remember him from 1947. And as a kid, I was very young. And, but he was a headline in the sporting news, I remember. And, I was barely able to read. And I was already seeing him in the headlines. And who is this guy? And my father saying that nobody knows yet. He could be the next Babe Ruth. And I didn't know who Babe Ruth was, but not as much as I would learn very shortly thereafter. And
the Yankees had a string of next Mickey Mantles for quite a few years. None of them panned out at all. Yeah.
Well, Mercer gave it a shot. He gave it a pretty good shot, but he wasn't going to be the next. Actually,
what happened is that he was, they played 74 and 75 in Yankee Stadium Shea Stadium when Yankee Stadium was being remodeled, and he was psyched out by Shea Stadium.
Yeah.
So they shipped after 74. They shipped him to the Giants for Bobby Bonds, who after Bobby Bonds finished his time with the Giants, he just bounced around from year to year to year for everybody.
Yeah.
And Mercer didn't get back to the Yankees. Went to the Cubs and got back to the Yankees in 1979, a couple of months before Munson was killed.
Yeah.
But the story on that, and Bobby Bonds was so popular with the Yankees that after '74 they traded him to the Angels, and they got Ed Figueroa and Mickey Rivers for him. Yeah.
That was a good trade. Yeah.
I don't ask questions on trades, with too many obscurities in there.
Yeah, but that was worth. That's a good question. That's a good question because Yeah. No, it's trades like that. I like to think about because they do help. They're helpful to both. They look as if they're going to be helpful to both teams. They don't always work out that way.
Because Jim Howard puts on in one of the groups, remember so and so. So the other day he had remember Chuck Stubbs. So I put a comment. I said Chuck is most remembered for giving up the 565-foot home run to Mickey Mantle. And I put down he lost 20 games in 1957 for Washington. I put down another thing.
Yeah, the long losing streak that season, if I remember.
Yeah, well, he was 0-11. He started 0-11.
Yeah.
There's a pitcher in Kansas City now that's 0-11 named Jordan Wilds.
Wow.
Kansas City Royals now, yeah. And so anyway, I put down another thing that in the 52 top set, which I have memorized. I did that a bunch of years ago. He is one of the few. This is one of the few baseball cards that has a pitcher with a bat. So one of the guys in the group posted a picture of the 62 Topps card showing Stubbs holding a bat. Those are very, very few and far between.
Yeah, who was it?
Chuck Stubbs. It was the White Chuck. Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. I don't remember him. I don't remember him ever being doing anything in particular as a hitter. But I can't.
The only other one I remember in the 59 top set, the Pirates had a pitcher named Don Gross. He had gotten from the Reds for Bob Perky, which was an idiotic deal. And Gross never did anything for the Pirates, and Perky became a very good pitcher for the Reds for a number of years. And Don Gross had a bat in his hand.
Huh?
Yeah, you never know, yeah. But I think I agree with you totally that trivia has to teach you something. You have to put it in context.
Yeah, and it to put together my trivia books, I had to do some research and the research I was doing started to fascinate me more than putting together the trivia questions, and it did turn me into someone who became fascinated, absolutely riveted by the the embryonic years of Major League Baseball. And I was, once I got into the 19th century, I wasn't ever going to get back out. It took me back there, and it's really kept me there in a lot of my work for all these years, and I've enjoyed every second of it. And
I give you credit when somebody asked me how do you know so much about, to me, how do you know so much about the 19th century? I said I had the greatest teacher in the world, which is you.
Yeah, and I had some of the greatest. There were a lot of great teachers that go unrecognized today, like Lee Allen and Lee Allen.
I read all those Putnam books when they came out. I would take them out of the library. I have them all in paperback, but they released them in paperback, a bunch of years ago.
Yeah.
And I read this stuff up when I first got started. I go to the library, take out a few of these things, and since I'm interested in history in other areas, like I know American history, I know European history. I do these quizzes on YouTube just to keep myself sharp. And so anything with history and the two sports, the other sports that I have are football and professional basketball.
Yeah.
Because I joined somebody created an NBA group from 46 to 66, I put some stuff down. The guy was very impressed. I said, I've seen everybody from George Mikan to LeBron James. It's like in baseball, I've seen everybody because I caught them in the latter part of their careers, obviously. Ted Williams and Stan Musial to Ohtani and Aaron Judge. You've seen them all.
Yeah.
And I have the ability to remember stuff.
Did you ever see George Yardley?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He looked like Adam Silver, the current commissioner.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say make that exact comparison. It's amazing. Yeah, I saw him play only on TV. But then he ran through his NBA career, and he was in his 30s, and he dropped down to a lower league. I can't remember the name of it. And they played in Columbus, Ohio one night when I was at Ohio State, and they played in the Fairgrounds Coliseum. Whatever team he was on. And I remember it's the only time I got to see him play live. And he was then probably about 34 or 35. And he still had it. Still had that shot. And it didn't look like much. It wasn't much of a jump shot. It just, it wasn't, he just went up in the air and kind of flicked the ball off. And it went in. Still going in. He still had the shot. But he didn't have any defense left, and he didn't have any rebounding strength left, and he left it all in the NBA. But for a few years there, man, I used to love to watch him play because he looked so innocuous when he stepped on the court. You couldn't believe this guy was going to dominate the game, and he did.
Yeah, I told people, I mentioned Mike, and when people ask me, I said, well, I started following this before the clock. 24-second clock.
Yeah.
And they look at me like I'm 100 years old. And, I discussed, when I interviewed Dick in 1985, we discussed a little bit his NBA career. He played 26 games at 52, 53 for the Fort Wayne Pistons. They started talking about having to travel from Fort Wayne to Syracuse or Fort Wayne to Rochester. And I don't know how the heck they did that back then,
That's where trivia can reach into multiple sports players, and can reach back. I'm trying to think. Now I don't know if this is true or not, but I remember the Busher pitching for the White Sox and playing for the Knicks. And now I'm trying to think of, has there been anybody since who played in the NBA and in MLB in the same season? And I can't think of anyone.
There was a player named Ron Reed who became a pitcher.
Did he play?
He played for the Pistons for a while before he. I don't know if he did it simultaneously.
Yeah,
the only other one that good. Dave DeBuscher's, believe it or not, he's on 2 Topps baseball cards. And the only other one I could, Groth played in the NBA for half a year after his rookie season, and then he went into the Army. And he told me that he wanted to do both when he came out. The Ranch Ricky, and he mentioned Gene Conley, who pitched and played backup. And he said Ricky told him that he's a backup and he's a pitcher. He said, you're going to play 150 games for us, and you're going to play 40 minutes a game for them. You can't do both. And those days, the seasons hardly overlapped.
No.
Not like it is now. And Groth said he went to baseball because that was where the money was at the time.
Yeah. That's what Frank Baumholz eventually did too. Baumholz was a very good basketball player. And
George Crow played professional basketball.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think probably the Busher then was the last guy to do it. Play baseball and basketball in the same season. I can't think of anybody who would have done it afterward. And
now it's impossible.
And
because of the scheduling, it's impossible. Basketball just ended a couple of days ago. Yeah.
And Deion Sanders is probably the last guy to do it in football and baseball.
No, Bo Jackson did that also. He ripped his knee up in a football game. Yeah.
Was Jackson's career after? Did he play after? I don't remember whether their careers overlapped.
Yeah, he played both. Yeah, he played with
he played both, but he had to give up football.
No, he was playing both when he got his knee up in a football game.
Yeah, he had a hip replacement. And,
there was another one who under the radar named Brian Jordan, who played for both the Braves and the Falcons.
Oh, okay. I remember.
That's under, of course, going back, you had Vic Janowitz.
Yeah, there were a number who did it.
And Ernie Neves was a pitcher, and he gave up, All-American football player and he gave up, I think, 1 or 2 of Route 60 in 1927.
Yeah, he did.
But as I said, those years the seasons didn't overlap, so it was.
Now this comes in another place where trivia comes in. There is only one man who's both in the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown and the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton.
Cal Hubbard.
Cal Hubbard. It's not a player; it's an umpire.
Yeah.
A long-time umpire and a long-time lineman in the NFL, and well-deserved both. He was a good umpire and a very solid player for a long time in the NFL. Yeah.
The umpire Charlie Berry used to do football games.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he did. He did. He coached too, I think, and a bit in the NFL. But yeah, so that's
and then you get into the whole area of fathers and sons who played different sports. Yogi had his middle son Tim played a year for the Colts.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I know that Dale played.
Dale
played Major League Baseball, and yeah.
So there's a lot. There's also a lot of that, but you learn this stuff from trivia. One of the good questions that they had on MLB, the quick pitch, I think it was yesterday. The day before was the the only 2 players who played in more than 300 games for both the Yankees and the Mets. And I couldn't get that because they're both 20th century, Beltran and Granderson. I had no idea. They didn't give you very much time to think. So, but you're absolutely right. You have to learn from this stuff.
Yeah.
Like one of the things I found out. I was researching the pitcher, Dutch Leonard, the knuckleballer, the other day, and I found out in the 49 Cubs there were 3 players named Emil, him, Verbin, and Cush.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is a major league record, but that's minutia.
That is minutia. Yeah. Oh, it's very interesting minutia.
Ruler I think in Pittsburgh in '95, he asked what does Smokey Burgess, Spook Jacobs, and Woody Main have in common? And I said they were all the first names of Forrest. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because real first names, and it was always something that I was interested in way back when I was a kid.
Yeah, I think we're harkening back for a moment to when we were talking about Brian Jordan and Sanders and Bo Jackson. I think Sanders indeed was the last to play baseball and football in both at the same time in the same season. Jordan little bit before Sanders, and by the time he got to the majors, Jordan was no longer playing. He was no longer playing professional football. Where Sanders actually did his season over. He played with overlap in the major leagues, he was excellent in both sports, and a major producer, and I don't know if we're ever going to see anyone of his ilk again.
No, you can't do that anymore because they're all year round now. Yeah.
Yeah, it really. Well, you'd have to get first of all, you'd have to get permission from your team, and very, very few teams with the salaries they're paying now are going to give one of the major league players the opportunity to play professional football too, and pay and guarantee his salary. And I think that they say, if you want to play football, sure, go ahead, but we'll pay you per game, and we will decide what it's going to be based on when you're able to return from the NFL and when you go to the NFL, and the NFL will say the same, because salaries there are high too. We're not going to pay you a full salary and not have you join us until your Major League Baseball season is over. So Sanders he was in the 90s, so he was able to get away with it. I don't think anybody after the turn of the century, at that point, the salaries were much too high for it to happen.
You know what I found out during the NCAA tournament? Because San Diego State made this big run.
Yeah.
This past year, as the all-time assist leader for San Diego State is Tony Gwynn.
Tony Gwynn, is that right?
Yeah.
No, I didn't know that. Wow. No, so Tony Gwynn may have been able to play in the NBA.
Yeah.
If he'd been so inclined. I never even. I
was very shocked when I heard that. Yeah.
I never knew him as a basketball player.
Yeah.
Huh. That's definitely trivia. That's a nice thing to know. Yeah. But it's now a world where a kid has to make a choice pretty young what sport is going to claim him. And if you wait till the end of high school, it may be too late if he's played football and gotten hurt. It may be the end of his career in basketball or baseball. So I think many kids now, where you used to get a lot of guys who'd get 4 or 5 letters a season. They get letters in baseball, basketball, football, track, and sometimes tennis or golf or something else like lacrosse.
Jimmy Brown, who just passed, was one of those. He was considered possibly the best American lacrosse player ever.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And he was also a very good tennis player. He was good at other track and field events. He played
basketball for Syracuse.
Yeah, he did. So he could do it all. And he was great, terrific athlete. And guys who have that kind of potential now, you have to wonder if LeBron could have played any other sport. I tend to think he could have, but I wonder if he ever even bothered. I think he saw basketball as his future probably by the time he was 7 years old.
Yeah, he went directly from high school.
Went directly from high
college,
school. Yeah. He went to the NBA, and I remember watching his first NBA game on TV, and this guy belonged, right? He belonged right from the outset. There was no learning curve for him, really. By the end of his first season, he already was a pretty solid player all around. his shooting
sure
he desired.
I'm
But,
sure he regrets not having a college degree.
Yeah. But that's one thing about trivia. You do learn from trivia, from questions that you meet up with people who have strange interests in your perspective anyway. They're strange in their perspective. That those are their main interests, and their interests they coincide with yours well and good. Sometimes they don't, and you learn a lot from people. Just coming to conventions where trivia was a big part of it. A trivia that we played off stage sometimes was more interesting, more valuable learning experience.
Well, we used to gather around Eddie, Eddie Gold, when the convention started. He was like everybody's grandfather. We used to throw stuff at each other. And there's one time, this was in St. Louis in 2007. I'm sitting there about two seats away from Bob. You know the name Bob Tiemann?
Oh yeah, Bob very well. Yeah.
Yeah. So he says, I bet you that he says that he would bet he was the only one in the room to name all the vice presidents. So I turned to him when he said that. I turned to him and says, "How much you want to bet?" He threw a few at me. I nailed them, and that was the end of that.
Yeah.
But for lists and that kind of thing, I always had an ability to do that. In fact, when I was in grade school, they would take me up to the sixth grade when I was in second grade or whatever, and I'd recite all the states or all the presidents or whatever. I was a prodigy.
Yeah.
With that, and when Saber brought it all out, I said the only regret I had was never beating you, and it took me, a couple of years to get down to that. I said, and somebody asked me, I said, I thought I was the best for my time, and I knew when to step down.
Yeah.
I stepped down after winning a second individual. Yeah.
No, it's eventually it has to happen. Yeah,
Bill Carr was amazing because he participated last year. I messaged him on Facebook. I said it's amazing that you can still compete at such a high level after all these years, because 1999 was the last year I played.
Yeah. No.
And I had my run, and still my proudest moment was the Branch Rickey one.
Yeah. No, Tiemann once asked me a very interesting trivia question, and you see, so what two players were teammates on three different pennant winners in three different leagues in the 19th century?
Do they count the National Association?
It's a major. If you want, yes, you can count it. Union Association, National Association. We'll count them all. This takes a moment to think.
I thought the American Association and the National League were fairly separate.
They were.
Well, it had to be in a Players League. It had to be one of them.
Okay.
It had to be.
I'll tell you the three leagues: the National League, the Players League, and the American Association.
It had to be from Brooklyn, because they didn't come into the National League until 1890, or maybe Cincinnati, or maybe St. Louis.
Nope. No, three different pennant winners, not three different teams.
No.
3 different pennant winners in 3 different leagues.
Was Tim Keefe one of them?
No. No. I'll tell you the teams. 1987 Detroit National, 1890 Boston Players League, and 1891 Boston.
Dan Brothers.
Dan Brothers was one of them.
There's more than Dan Brothers?
Well, they're teammates. He had two teammates.
Oh, God. The hell was the third baseman of those teams?
There you go.
I forget his name. I know the position, but the name is slipping me by me for...
Okay. Yeah. Let's see here. Wait a minute.
I have a book on the Wolverines that came out a number of years ago. That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. You led the Players League in RBI.
Harry Wolverton?
No. No. He also was a teammate of brothers on the Buffalo team and was part of the Big Four that came from Buffalo to Detroit and when Buffalo
I'll know the name when you say it. I'm just drawing a blank.
Yeah. He's never been considered for the Hall of Fame. And part of the reason was he broke his leg 2 years in a row, sliding. And that kind of put a quick end to his career. Otherwise, he's probably headed for the Hall of Fame.
Richardson?
Hardy Richardson. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
All of a sudden, the last name.
That question made me think. And
yeah.
Bob was very good. Is very good at really asking very good trivia questions. And he's very good on. I was a teammate of his on 2 winning teams in the team competition. He was always a big help to me and a big adjunct because he not only knew the 19th century well, he also knew dead ball very well.
Dick Thompson knew dead ball very, very well. He was a authority on the Federal League.
Yeah. He was Vic was very good too, but so that might be a good one to end on because that's one of the best. That to me is one of the best trivia questions that I've ever been asked, and I learned from it because I really had to think about it to come up with the answer.
Another one. I'll leave you with this. There's a guy, Ty Waterman, who wrote a book on the 1918 Red Sox. And he came to New York to do a book talk. So he asked me name the 4 or 5, I think it was 5, 1918 Red Sox who were on the 1923 Yankees. And so I rattled those off, and he was very surprised.
He's very surprised you got them. Huh?
Yeah.
He was surprised that you got them? Really?
Yeah.
Oh, he shouldn't have been.
Because everybody knows Ruth, but the other 4 are not. And there's a catcher, Wally Shang, who played on the World Series champions with the A's, with the Red Sox, and with the Yankees.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell me who the second baseman was in the 1918 Red Sox?
Oh, God. Was that Aaron Ward?
No. Nope. The Red Sox really had a patchwork infield. They really did.
Dugan was the third baseman.
Not 18, no. 18, they really didn't have a regular third baseman. Shank played quite a bit of third base. Shank, and second baseman was Dave Sheen. And Dave Sheen had a very checkered career. That was really his only year of distinction. But he had a lengthy professional career, most of which was spent in the minors. But he did get into. He was on some very good. He was on a good A's team. He played with the Phillies. He was on the Braves. Played a year with the Cubs. Spent part of the season with the Cubs. And then he joined back. He went back to the Braves. Played with Cincinnati as a regular in 17, and then he was with the Red Sox in 18. And he played a little bit in 19 with the Red Sox, and that was it. But he was a very weak hitter. And
one of the things I found out yesterday was that Jim put out, remember George McAvish, he was putting up all these 52 and 53 obscure pirates. So I went to the reference page on Mekovich. I found out that he was on the 46 Red Sox.
Yeah, he was on the 47 Indians too. And he did very well with them.
Well, he was the center fielder before Doby came.
Yeah, he was.
And then he spent 48 and 50 with Oakland in the PCL. He's part of that famous 48 Oakland Oaks team with Stengel managed.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah.
No, I didn't know that either. Yeah, I didn't know that either. Because they had blank on the page with hitting, but then when I went to the transactions, and I found out the Indians dealt them to Oakland after 47.
I'll tell you why he isn't remembered. Because he wasn't one of the old men. He was only 27 years old in 1948. So there's a picture of the old men all together. You know, they're all.
Billy Martin was on that team.
Yeah. Martin was on the team too, and obviously was not an old man. Martin was about
19, 20 years old. Yeah.
Yeah, he was. But that's why Mekovich isn't remembered as being part of it. He was an instrumental part of the team. He had 336 that year for the Oaks, and may have led them in a number of offensive departments. And he came back to the majors with the White Sox the next year. But he had that.
They went back in 50, and the Pirates took him, in whatever draft they had after 1950.
Yeah. And he had a good year with the Pirates in 50.
He had 2 decent years, and they shipped him to the Cubs on the Kleiner trade, and
he
just faded out after that.
Yeah, 51. He came back from Oakland. He went back to Oakland in 50, and then he came to the Pirates in 51.
Yeah.
And he had 2 pretty good seasons with him, and then after that he kind of drifted. He ended up back in Oakland by 55.
Another one he put up, Johnny Lindell. And Johnny Lindell led the American League in doubles in 43 and 44, and he led the American League in total bases in 1944.
I didn't know that.
He had a tremendous World Series in 47. Hit the key home run in the last game of the 49 season. And then after fading out in 1950, he went and reinvented himself as a knuckleball pitcher and came up and pitched for the Pirates and the Phillies in 1953 with 6 and 17.
Yeah.
And a catcher with him named Mike Sandlock.
Right. From the 46 Dodgers.
Yeah. Sandlock lived to his 100, and Sandlock, before the Pirates took him in 1953, he hadn't played in the major leagues in about 6 years. And he never appeared in a game with the Phillies. Lindell in 54 played in 7 games with the Phillies, and I think all of them was a pinch hitter.
Yeah.
But you find stuff out like this, and every player there's always something about almost every player.
Yeah, so you're right. you look at anybody with a 10-year career, they did something usually during those 10 seasons that's worth it. It's worth a trivia question, a real trivia question, because it's something that's noteworthy and memorable. And that's what trivia is really all about: the noteworthy and the memorable, or the discovery of the noteworthy and memorable.
The memorable,
which
exactly.
Remains buried until somebody digs it out. And I dug up one the other day. Who was the only pitcher to be a losing pitcher, to pitch a complete game loss in a game in which he had a teammate who hit 4 home runs? It's only happened twice. Once was when Horner hit 4 home runs.
Yeah, I was going to say Horner, yeah.
The Braves pitcher did not go the route. They had about 3 or 4 different pitchers take the loss. But
was it the series game?
No. White Sox won that game. No, every other game.
There's a few of them. Sean Green and this guy on Cincinnati who nobody remembers, Scooter Gannett, I think his name was. Yeah, but those games were all wins. The only guy to take a complete game loss was in the Ed Delahanty 4 home run game. And this guy was arguably the most unlucky pitcher ever in Major League Baseball. And he is definitely a worthy trivia candidate. He was runner-up for the ERA title in 2 separate seasons in 1900 and again in 1902 in the National League. And in a 7-year career, he never had a winning season. He had great ERAs. He would have great games. He pitched shutouts. He had to pitch shutouts in order to win, and he lost. No.
This guy was Noodles Hahn, much more memorable than this guy. This guy, Ned Garvin.
Ned Garvin, I've heard the name.
Yeah. He was.
Look him up.
He's the unlucky loser, and he has the only. That's a good one to end on. So
okay, on that note, yes, really, they always are terrific. I thoroughly enjoy these with you.
I do too. It's a lot of fun, and I look forward to the next one.
Okay, see you next time.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
The proceeding has been a comfortably zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.